Hey, what up, y'all? This is Theo and my co-host Derek. We are the Heels of Time, and we're going to be blasting some Wheels of Time thoughts and interesting, hopeful for people to for the new show that's coming up on Amazon. And if you don't know, it's a huge series. We're going to be double blasting you. No double innuendos, but we actually recorded a little session before. And then obviously we're going live now. We're going to be doing these kind of things every so often. And for our first episode, what we're doing right now live is going to be one of the biggest characters, I would say. Would you agree, Derek?
Oh, for sure.
The entire series? Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Rand, if you're not aware, he is the main protagonist. And we're going to see how he relates to a particular Greek god. And that god we're going to go through today is Dionysus. The one we did previously was Apollo. He's one of my favorites, but Dionysus is pretty dope too. So what'd you think, Derek? Think it's about time to lay some trivia and lay some stuff down for some folks?
I think so. So just to recap what we're doing, kind of like in wrestling, when the heel sets up the face, we're not so much villains. It's kind of loudmouths, but we will spoil everything though. So
yeah,
if you haven't read through the series, you'll hate us for that if that matters to you. But if you've read through the series, or even if you want another view, we're gonna make you look real good when you talk to your friends, because you're gonna pull stuff out that no one else is talking about.
That is very true.
So Theo, why don't you hit him up with some facts about Dionysus?
All right, so he's a Greek god, and maybe so historians and people that study mythology, most likely he didn't actually come from Greece. Most likely he was adopted into the pantheon, quote unquote, so to speak. Most likely from the east of some sort.
All right.
So he's got a really interesting double birth, actually.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah. The cool thing about him is he was born and then kind of got killed and then was born again. So his father is Zeus. His mother was a mortal person, as in a human. Zeus gets around a lot, and Hera hates that. That's his wife. She doesn't like that too much. So essentially, she ripped him apart, just like totally dismembered him. Damn. And Zeus is like, "No, my child," and then cut open his thigh, popped him in his thigh, because his brain technically didn't die.
Thigh.
Yeah, and then became like mature again, and then that's when he like popped out of Zeus's thigh. Kind of weird if you think about it, but yeah, Dionysus is a weird god. He's different. Some might say he was like the 12th god, like one of the last quote unquote adopted as part of the Olympians. That I can't really say. Don't know for sure, but he's crazy, man. So in Greek.
So when you say he's crazy, you mean figuratively, or you mean like he's crazy?
Figuratively. So he's actually super chill. He's if you think of someone that's kind of hammered all the time and kind of has like that euphoric kind of like super chill, that's him. However, because he's the god of wine. Go figure. God of wine and fertility is like the big guys. Hey, Derek is partaking in a symposium right now. So the thing with that, it's like he's not the god of drunkenness, so to speak.
Okay.
It's like when you get like that euphoric, happy, when you're like super nice buzz and maybe go a little tipsy after that, that's him.
So so like when the moment when the universe all makes sense before it becomes a blur.
And he would be that line between the blur and when it makes sense. He's like that line. Most people go beyond the line hence the madness part.
Okay.
And it's more of a frenzied, like, yeah, I can do whatever, man.
Mm.
And then like goes off, and then you do some really crazy stuff.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, a little crazy. So he had a whole bunch of followers, as you can well imagine. I mean, if you think about what he's the god of, people quite enjoyed it. He may not have been like super powerful. It's not like he threw thunderbolts, Zeus,
Okay.
or brought the sun up, or was a crazy archer.
Okay.
No, he basically was like, oh sweet, here's some grapes, wine, excellent, yay. Oh, you want to get busy? Cool, here you go. I'm also the god of fertility, so yeah, knock it out of the park.
All right.
God of the orchard, lesser of epiphanies. um but he was probably one of the more popular gods, other than probably Zeus, and probably like the big three: Zeus, Poseidon, and maybe Hades.
Okay.
Um, but he would be popular, obviously, because you want to get hammered all the time and have a good time, right? Party man.
Oh yeah.
So if you wanted to party, he would be the guy that would make it go down. So
Okay.
super popular. That being said, uh, most Greeks back in the BCE era weren't crazy partiers. They weren't really party animals. So it kind of goes against a little bit of the nature of how much fun do you have versus being very diplomatic and very prim and proper.
Mm. So
And
so he's very different in that regard.
yes, hence also he doesn't really follow the same pattern as the other Greek gods. So therefore, did he come from somewhere else and he was adopted in?
Right, right.
Most likely, I would say yes. Um, at least in my opinion.
Sure, sure.
So the crazy part is women loved him.
Oh,
Like he had cults, and just like every other deity, but his were almost always female, almost
oh,
always.
that's very interesting.
And men were hostile toward those cults. They really didn't like them. Male dominated society, ladies
Mm.
getting like loose. I could see where they were going with that.
Yeah.
Would not be cool now, but back then that's probably what they wanted to keep their females down. Um,
Right, right.
so interestingly enough, he also followed into the Roman pantheon known as Bacchus.
Okay.
Almost the exact same background. They just changed the names. Zeus is Jupiter. Just almost identical.
Right, right.
Probably didn't, he didn't come from, the East. However, there was a third god called Liber.
Okay.
So spelled Liber. So he was like an older god. So think of it as like pre Greco-Roman deities.
Okay.
God of almost identical, the same thing. Almost identical. God of like madness, more like frenziedness, wine, fertility. Wow, sounds pretty common, right? Again, extremely popular. The powers that be were like, but they're old. But what do you do when something's old but still wants to be worshipped? You make them new. So
Okay.
what they did is they made the reborn, like the reincarnation of Dionysus, Bacchus, as Liber.
Wow.
So they eliminated the one, adopted the other, but to the main common folk, they're like, what's the difference in a name? We'll just,
Right.
we'll just pray to Bacchus. That's not a big deal. Interestingly enough, we're just going about a little bit of a tangent, has nothing to do with this crap.
No, go
But
ahead.
Bacchus, if you think a bacchanal, I mean, it's kind of an old school term, but it means like super big shindig, but it's still
Oh,
technically human, in English. Libation, liber.
wow. Wow, wow.
So
That's really cool.
it's actually you know, a play on words, and probably one of the more famous ancient plays by Euripides is the Bacchae. So long story short, Bacchus goes to where his mom is from, and it's a couple generations, and they're like, Psh, Dionysus, he's no god. No, he sucks. And he's like, what? And he's hidden. He tends to disguise himself, and he's chilling around. He's like, damn, that's not cool. So essentially, he makes the women go nuts,
Mm,
and now that's where you can get to the line of madness, because
right.
literally, his aunt rips off his aunt, who is like queen,
Yeah.
rips her son's head off.
Oh my.
And while the men aren't, again, men weren't taken effect by this, because all the women, they're like, oh my God, our women folk are nuts. And she's literally like carrying his head like a trophy, like, yeah, I killed a mountain lion. And in her mind, she literally thought she murdered a mountain lion by just ripping him apart, and was carrying his head. And Dionysus cracks his knuckles pretty much and is like, oh yeah, by the way, now I'm gonna take all that down, because now she's coming off of the high.
Okay.
And she's like looking at this thing, and then realizes it's her son's head. And it's like, oh. And I'm not gonna, it's actually a really cool read.
Wow. That's crazy, man.
Uh it's actually really cool. I'm not going to spoil totally. I know I didn't get like all the details like perfect, so don't like go crazy on me. It's been a long time
Dude,
since I read
if
it.
anyone wants to question us, leave it in the comments.
Yeah, pretty much. He just giving you the Cliff Note version.
Yeah.
Cool thing also is he's also dual depicted. He can either be shown as a young man that's like totally virile and like would think of as a typical Greek god,
Okay.
or he's crazy old, like super long beard with his staff of a, which
Probably like a
also,
barrel or something.
no, not like Friar Tuck, but
Okay.
ironically though, his staff is a pine cone, like on top
Oh,
of it,
that's,
kind of.
huh.
It's not like an olive branch or anything like that, or it's just
Oh, that's
pine cone.
interesting.
You would also
Well,
think you would think it'd be like grape leaves and stuff. I mean, he is like obviously god of grapes and, you know, orchard, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But,
for sure.
and yes, you do associate him with like things growing, and like as he
Well,
walks around the, you know, around the fields, things just
check this out real quick, man. Let me interject
so
here.
go for it. I can go on forever. So
No.
good thing.
I'm gonna throw it back to you, but I never knew about that pine cone. And let me tell you, the gum or whatever sap from the pine cones is toxic. So think about it. If you put that stuff in your wine, whew, who knows what's gonna happen?
That is true too. I mean, all gods have that duality of, oh, you're cool to me, so I'll be cool to you. But if you're not cool to me, you're going to get punished
Okay, right.
because of your hubris. So back to the Bacchae. Essentially, what he did that for is to be like, yo, I'm a real god. Don't screw with me. Just because I'm usually super chill and nice doesn't mean I can't. Doesn't mean I'm not powerful. Doesn't mean I can't do things. And due to your hubris.
So just because I walk around like a man doesn't mean I can't flex like a god, basically.
Bingo. Exactly. Yep.
Well,
That's him in a
okay.
nutshell.
All right. So do you have any more points to add, or
I'll probably add some stuff as you got as we go through a little bit of the rant stuff.
okay? Are you ready to?
Yeah, let's hammer him out. Let's see what's
All
up.
right. So dude, interject anytime. Like if you're like, man, that's Dionysus right there, or if you're like, nah, like that's good too.
Yep.
So let me just start off with reminding everybody we're looking at these texts for syncretism. So what is that? That's just when did you draw parallels? When did you get ideas from like other stuff you read? It's not plagiarism. Robert Jordan was intensely smart, and he was very careful to look at a vast array of literature and kind of like doot, and then blend it to his own. Like think about Bob Ross. Like He was like, oh, we'll put a happy critter here, happy tree there, and he's like, he may be like, well, I saw this meadow once, but it's all coming from his memory. It's all coming from like his way that he sees things. And the thing about syncretism is it's not always that everything is exactly the same. In fact, you might purposefully change something to add a contrast. So keep that in mind also when you hear certain things. For example, I'm going to pick on one aspect first. You mentioned that there's a dualism of Dionysus being an old dude and a young dude, right?
Yep.
Well, on one hand,
I think I know where you're going with this. Go for
on
it.
one hand, we have Luz Theron. Okay.
Yeah.
He lived like 1,000 years before Rand, something like that. And he lived to be about 400 years old. So he's like steady hand, old dude. Now, on his mission, and we'll get more of that later, he needed to recruit a bunch of folks to basically be like, yeah, you're going to die, but we need to do this. None of the women folk stepped up to help him. It was just men. So that's obviously the opposite of Dionysus. However, Luz Theron, when he does his mission, everybody that follows him goes mad. All of them, including himself. So that's a little bit different from Dionysus. You say he kind of has more control of the euphoria. So flash forward to his death. When you take him the one power, which is what they do, that's how magic is in Randland. It's all about channeling the one power. When you take in a bunch, you get euphoria. When you take in the most you can, you're on that cusp of euphoric and drunkenness, like Dionysus. When you take too much, you literally go mad and burn to a cinder. So was there more to Luz Theron's madness? We'll see. But nonetheless, he's gone and he comes back, so to speak, as the Dragon Reborn, Rand AlThor. Now, Rand AlThor, he's only in his 20s throughout the whole series. Spoiler alert, this whole series is a spoiler. He's only going to be in his 20s. So we have that dualism of Luz Theron being the old dude, Rand being the young dude. Does that make sense to you, Theo?
Well, but essentially, although they're different, they're like the same people.
Oh, for sure.
So it's just about, it's pretty much rebirth and almost reincarnation in a way, and just how they're depicted. So, yeah.
Oh, for sure. And as the readers of the series know, Luz Theron isn't exactly gone. So that dualism comes out. And sometimes, he seems to be able to even think and maybe even perform action. So read and find out, so to speak. So here's another thing that about the madness. Now, Rand AlThor, because of the Dark One, Shaitan, and what he did to the One Power, a male channeler will go mad over time using that power. However, in the case of Rand AlThor, he kind of goes with the flow. Like, he'll be like, 1 minute, he's like nuking people, like, the next minute, he's like, I picked these beautiful flowers for you, but the thorns, they made my fingers bleed, but they were so beautiful. Here, take them. Okay, but it works for him. So another time, so he kind of uses his madness almost to an advantage in the series. Like, literally, it works out for him better sometimes that he is starting to go a little crazy. So similar, again, to Dionysus, or is it Bacchus?
Bacchus, yep.
Yeah, similar to Bacchus or Dionysus, his followers go mad. All the men that follow Rand, they go crazy, channeling that power. And Rand even sometimes, he kind of caretakes for them sometimes, and he'll be like, my gentle child, go quietly into the night. He puts some poison, some hemlock or whatever in their ear or whatever, and then they just, go to sleep. So what's really interesting,
when they go too far,
right. And he's trying to nip it in the bud before they go, whoo, right?
Because he can tell.
Oh yeah, because and that's the other thing. That's right. He's like keenly attuned to madness. So like he knows. So that's very interesting. And thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, no.
So another thing that's very interesting, I know that Dionysus is technically more like an orchard, more like a vineyardy kind of grapey kind of god.
You need an orchard. Yeah.
But right. Well, the thing is in Randland.
Vegetation. How about that?
Well, sure, vegetation, absolutely. Now, specifically, and this might be a minor change, or it can just go in the vein of vegetation. Rand and his father Tam, they have an apple orchard.
Right.
And they make the best apple brandy. And everybody anticipates it every single year on a festival that they call Sunday. Or and Beltane, I believe. And maybe I'm getting that a little bit wrong because Bacchus is getting to me.
But it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
Apple juice.
And
grape juice.
Grape juice, yeah.
Just a different fruit does the same thing.
That's right. And so tying to that and in his kind of Rand's kind of Dionysus godly power is at one point in the story, by miraculous means to say the least, he doesn't even use the one power for this. He summons a massive apple orchard, and this is in the time of despair. So he's literally bringing life back to the world. And that just seems like a very interesting parallel as we depict Dionysus as kind of teaching people how to tend the vineyards. And here's Rand literally giving the orchards to the people, almost like a Johnny Dionysus seed, if you will. So
same difference.
Yeah. So now going to the death and rebirth, we kind of alluded to that already. Lews Therin totally dies in bodily form anyway, but he is reborn in Rand AlThor. And that's the whole prophecy of the Dragon Reborn. And that ties again to the fact that Dionysus is kind of, well, he's the god of epiphany, but he also, that also kind of ties into prophecy in this way. Rand is said to be the most powerful Ta'veren to ever walk the world. And what is Ta'veren? Well, you can cause things to happen, but you can also inspire people. You can inspire great poetry. You can inspire someone to write their first novel. You can inspire people to get married, all kinds of stuff. So as I understand with Dionysus, he kind of entertains, well, let's just say it. He kind of entertains the idea of, let's all get drunk and have an orgy.
Pretty much, yeah.
And you can think that probably that would inspire a lot of weddings to happen. You could imagine.
Yeah, we'll say sure.
Sure. So
a lot of things going down, at least.
Absolutely, a lot of crazy stuff. So here's something let me lay this on you, man. So we don't know for sure if Dionysus came from a foreign land or not, right? So let's make that a fine point. We just don't know, correct?
The only thing in this, I'm going to say scriptures, but in writings, in almost every single form, this is why we say it's kind of interesting, is because he's kind of, I don't say kicked off of Olympus, or not super accepted. So he just likes to wander. So he goes to Asia. And he kind of like comes from the east, hence no other god did that. So what does that actually mean? Who knows?
He comes from the east, especially?
Yes.
All right, so check this out. Rand AlThor is born in the west proper. They call it the wetlands, or the main Rand land, where I'd say 90% of the story takes place. However, his mother is pregnant with him in the wastes. She gets pregnant in the east. She conceives of Rand in the east. She, to complicate the story even more, is originally from the west. So she's from the west. Mm-hmm. She goes to the east to get pregnant. Mm-hmm. She comes back to the west to give birth to Rand. So where does Rand belong?
Everywhere
and nowhere.
Exactly.
So Rand is the epitome of a traveling god in that regard. As far as not a traveling god, but like a foreign god. And you see this as you read the story, you see that he doesn't quite really belong anywhere, but he belongs everywhere. Like people will look at him and tease him for his reddish hair because they're like, oh, you're like an Aiel. Only Aiel have hair like that. But at the same time, his father is like, you are a Two Rivers boy. You were born here and you are my son. So it's kind of that dualism going on. Like, where do I fit in, you know? So moving on from that, there's this really specific scene that rings kind of like a Dionysus kind of event.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, when Rand starts really coming into his powers, he's serving these, they're called Lords of Tyr. So they're Tyrian lords. And they know of a mountain called the Spine of the World where they get their ice from to chill their wine. So they're sipping off of this spiced wine like this. And they go, oh, I say, this vintage, so deliciously chilled, Rand. Where did you find the people to get the ice? And Rand's just like, what? I didn't send people to a mountain to get ice. How do you think the wine got chilled? Exactly. So it's almost like Rand is a connoisseur of wine. Like he knows, this is the best way to have it.
Yeah, he knows the stuff.
And he makes it so. So it's a minor point, but it's very much something Dionysus would do, I would imagine,
Yeah, got to make it good.
So in the vein of like not exactly the orgies, there's a character, Massima, who follows Rand. He's a dude, but he performs mass weddings all the time. He's like, all right, you're all married. Now go consummate, So it's kind of similar, not the same. Moving on, we touched on Lews Therin being about 400, being older, but if I didn't say this, he was specifically 400 years on his death. He was an old dude, like half a Yoda old, like old. Well, 4/9 of a Yoda old, if you want to be precise. So, and we talked about Rand being a young dude, but here's something interesting, and it's kind of, we're not really sure if they're referring to Rand or not, but at one point there's a throwaway phrase in the book, and it's something that only the Forsaken are supposed to know. And the Forsaken, here's a hint for a future episode, they're basically the original Olympian god pantheon, or are they? So
I guess
they all know that Rand is the Lord of Chaos, or at least they know this one phrase, let the Lord of Chaos reign. And Dionysus, spreading chaos where he goes.
Everywhere he goes.
And I want to go back to something now about Tavarannus. It's not that he makes just good things happen. We talked about the weddings and the epiphanies and everything like that. Stuff. But it's like a yin and a yang almost. It balances out. So maybe a baby falls 3 stories and lands on a big bag of wool or something that just happens to be there, that someone just pitched in the corner. Baby's fine, not a scratch. Same day, someone gives birth and it's stillborn. So it balances out. It's chaos. Someone trips on a twig and they break their neck.
It's like rolling that die.
Exactly. It's
eating
nuts.
That one.
You never know. So, and the closer Rand is, the more potent these
crazy
effects are. Oh, yeah.
Which
so
oddly familiar.
Yeah. So we have Rand kind of as this planty, kind of orchardy kind of god, and we have Dionysus as this kind of agriculture-y, grapey kind of god of madness. Rand kind of going mad. And here's the last point I'm going to tie together is that some folks kind of attribute the Aes Sedai themselves as being kind of, in a way, waiting to follow the dragon. And as a matter of fact, in the series, their name translates to the servants. So in a way, all the female Aes Sedai are kind of in a way followers of Rand. Now, do they go mad? No. But again, that's one of those juxtapositions, one of those changes to make it Robert Jordan's own thing, and not just, he's not like we said, he's not plagiarizing at all. He's examining this stuff from a very intellectual point of view and making it his own interpretation. So unless I missed something, homie, I think I hit a lot of the main points. So does Rand sound like maybe he could be some kind of aspect of Dionysus?
Absolutely. In what we're trying to go with this series is, we're not saying Rand is Dionysus, Rand is X, or Matt is X. What we're saying is the way Robert Jordan may have, and this is not in text, it's not like he wrote it down and said, this is what I've done, this is interpretation. Our interpretation specifically of where could he have maybe gotten some of his influences, and maybe take a little pitter patter from here and a little snippet from there, and just kind of make this character different. There are some other literary works, some of you may be familiar with, like Harry Potter. Probably one of the first things that I was like, bing, I had names and all that kind of stuff, but Fluffy the dog, right? Everybody knows, oh, it's a three-headed beast. Well, that's Cerebus. That is, I mean, there is no delineation. That is where he came from, 100%. Rollings may say yes or no, but it's irrelevant. 100%. They're identical.
So you say that is kind of what brought you into the world of syncretism?
Yes. So what I think is interesting is that it's all the same. It's cool, in my opinion. You can maybe read the old literature, and it's just tweaked in a different way for modern, but you still learn from it from the past, which is pretty cool at least from my studies. So when I was reading the Wheel of Time, I'm like, man, this kind of sounds like X, Y, and Z. And then Derek's like, man, I can believe this, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, man, yes. Someone else, kind of thinks the same way. And they're not 100% matched, but I don't think that was ever the intention. I think the intention was to grab some cool parts, or some what he thought were cool parts, could be bad parts, so to speak, not so favorable traits, and like bring a whole bunch of different religions and deities
and history,
lots of process, history, and bring them together in this super arcing 12 book
14
book, that's right, 14 book gargantuan series. This isn't a light read. This isn't something you're going to be able to pick up in 3 hours. You're going to finish it. That's not the way he wrote. So,
but you have until November to catch up.
Exactly. So hopefully we've piqued your interest a little bit. We had little technical difficulties. We're going for 4 o'clocks on Friday, or Sunday rather, and hopefully we'll be a little more on time next week. But like I said, we're going to double hammer you. We're going to post this up sometime this week. And we already have the previous run that we did for Apollo, which I said he's one of my cool guys.
Yes, and so, check this out. It's a really good one. And you're going to hear some parallels that I promise you no one's talked about before, at least in a format like this.
So we hope you enjoyed it. We hope everything works out well for you. Have a good week. We will have our channels up and posted relatively soon. We do have an email address at least. So if you have comments, or if you have some questions or something, please hit us up. We would definitely appreciate that.
Absolutely.
It is the Heels of Time podcast at gmail.com. That'll go to Derek and myself. And we'll either answer you via email, or if we find multiple people asking the same thing, obviously we're going to address it next time we can.
Oh, for sure.
So,
and let me throw in there, Theo, we're the heels so that you can be the face. We're making you look good. when you go to your shindigs, virtual as they may be,
Right.
and you talk about Wheel of Time on November, you can say, actually, I'm pretty sure that Rand is Dionysus, and you will blow your friends away
That is
unless
true.
they're watching.
Right. Oh,
So-
hopefully they do.
So let me give a little spoiler to our spoilers. Next week, you're going to catch us answering the question, is Rand AlThor the Egyptian sun god Ra?
Interesting. Dun, dun, dun. All right, y'all. Have a pleasant rest of the evening. We hope you are doing well, and we'll see you next week.
And until next time, we are the Heels of Time.